It was a regular afternoon at a busy restaurant, filled with the hum of conversations and clattering plates. A customer walked in, looking like any other diner, casually dressed, confident, and with a polite smile. But this was no ordinary customer. She was vegan and had visited this restaurant many times before. Today, however, was going to be different. What happened next would not only shock the customer, but would also shake the very foundations of the restaurant chain. Picture this. A restaurant manager, standing behind the counter, decides to turn her away. Why? Because of her vegan choices. What followed was something no one could have expected. Stay with us as we dive into this wild story of a manager's huge mistake and the unforgettable lesson she learned the hard way. As Sarah walked through the door, the familiar smell of freshly baked bread and sizzling dishes greeted her. She smiled to herself, thinking about how nice it would be to unwind over a warm, delicious meal. She had been craving something light and satisfying, and the restaurant was just the place for it. She sat down at one of the wooden tables by the window, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. A few minutes later, a server approached her with the menu. "Hi there. What can I get you today?" the young server asked with a smile. Sarah smiled back, flipping through the menu. "I'm in the mood for something vegan today. Do you have any options?" she asked, politely hoping for a new dish she hadn't tried before. The server paused for a moment. "I'm not sure. Let me check with the manager for you," he said, walking away. Sarah didn't think much of it. After all, she had ordered vegan meals here before without any trouble. But what happened next shocked her. The server returned, followed by the manager of the restaurant, a woman named Lisa. Sarah didn't recognize her at first, but when the woman approached the table, she smiled in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes. Lisa was known for running the place with an iron fist, and though she had been polite to Sarah before, there was something different about her today. "We don't really do vegan food here," Lisa said, almost dismissively, without bothering to ask Sarah what she was specifically looking for. "You might want to try somewhere else. This isn't the kind of place for that." Sarah's smile faltered. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had been here many times before and had never faced an issue with finding something she could eat. It wasn't as if she was asking for the restaurant to change its entire menu, just to offer something that would accommodate her dietary preferences. She tried to explain, calmly, "I've been here before, and I've always found something to eat. Could you just check with the kitchen and see if there's anything? Maybe a salad or something?" Lisa shook her head, clearly irritated. "Look, if you can't eat the food here, maybe this isn't the place for you," she said, crossing her arms. "We don't have vegan options. If you're that strict about your diet, you're better off going somewhere else. We don't need to change our menu for one customer." Sarah was taken aback by the harshness in Lisa's tone. She hadn't expected this kind of treatment, especially not from a place she had always enjoyed. She could feel the eyes of the other customers on her, and the embarrassment began to set in. But she didn't want to make a scene. With a deep breath, Sarah stood up, trying to hold back the frustration building inside her. "Fine," Sarah said quietly, gathering her things. "I'll leave, but you'll hear from me about this." Without another word, she walked out of the restaurant, her mind racing. How could she have been treated this way? She had been a loyal customer for months, and now she was being shown the door simply because of her dietary choices. It didn't sit right with her, and she wasn't going to let it slide. She pulled out her phone as she left the restaurant, determined to contact the corporate office later to make sure they knew what had happened. Little did Lisa know, the person she had just rejected wasn't just a regular customer. Sarah was someone with a much bigger connection to the restaurant than she could ever have imagined. The next day, Sarah woke up feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at the restaurant. She had been a loyal customer for months, even recommending the place to her friends. And yet, Lisa, the manager, had treated her like she was a nuisance simply because she was vegan. It wasn't just about the food. It was about how she was made to feel like an outsider for making a personal choice. As Sarah sat at her desk, scrolling through her phone, she finally made up her mind. She was going to reach out to corporate. She wasn't just going to let this go, but as she pulled up the contact details for the restaurant chain's headquarters, something clicked in her mind. She had a different idea. Instead of just sending an email or making a call, she was going to take a different approach, one that would make sure the issue didn't get swept under the rug. She picked up her phone again, this time dialing the number of the restaurant's corporate office directly. After a few rings, a polite voice answered. "Good morning. How may I assist you?" the receptionist asked. "I need to speak to someone about an incident I experienced at one of your locations yesterday," Sarah said calmly, her tone controlled but firm. "Of course. May I have your name, please?" "Sarah Williams," she said, giving the receptionist a name that would mean nothing to the person on the other end. She explained what had happened, detailing the interaction with Lisa, how she had been treated unfairly, and how the manager had refused to even consider accommodating her needs. The receptionist took notes and promised to pass along the complaint to the higher-ups. Sarah ended the call feeling a little better, knowing that she had made her voice heard. But in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that something more needed to be done. That afternoon, Sarah made a decision. She wasn't just a regular customer. She was the one who owned the entire chain of restaurants. Sarah hadn't mentioned her ownership when she made the complaint, and that was intentional. She had built the restaurant from the ground up, starting with a small, humble location, and had expanded over the years. Her name wasn't attached to the business publicly. She had always preferred to stay behind the scenes, keeping a low profile while ensuring the restaurants thrived. But today, she was going to make her presence known. She called the restaurant again, this time asking for a meeting with Lisa. "I need to speak with the manager of your location on 5th Street, Sarah said. "It's urgent." A few hours later, she arrived at the restaurant. Sarah walked in quietly, not drawing attention to herself. She could see Lisa at the counter talking to one of the servers. The manager didn't recognize Sarah at first, which was exactly what Sarah had hoped for. She stood off to the side waiting for Lisa to notice her. When Lisa finally looked up and saw her standing there, she immediately straightened up, giving Sarah a polite but somewhat distant smile. "Can I help you?" Lisa asked, her tone still cool. "I think it's time we had a chat," Sarah replied, walking toward her. She didn't smile, and there was no hint of kindness in her voice. Lisa's smile faltered slightly. She seemed to be trying to place Sarah's face but couldn't quite connect the dots. "I don't think I've seen you here before. Is there something I can do for you?" Lisa asked, still unaware of who Sarah truly was. Sarah didn't hesitate. "Actually, I think we've met before. I'm the one you turned away yesterday when I asked for a vegan option." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And you'll be surprised to know that I'm also the owner of this entire restaurant chain." Lisa's face froze, her eyes widening in shock. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. It took her a moment to process what Sarah had just said. You're the owner?" Lisa finally stammered, her voice tinged with disbelief. Sarah nodded, her expression serious. Yes, I am. And I'm not here to make small talk. I'm here to discuss how you treated me yesterday and what's going to be done about it. The silence in the air was thick. Lisa looked around nervously, clearly embarrassed by the realization that she had just made a terrible mistake. The manager, who prided herself on running the restaurant smoothly, was now standing face to face with the very person who owned the business, and the weight of her actions was beginning to hit her. Sarah didn't let the silence linger for too long. You rejected me yesterday, not because of anything I did, but because of who I am. And that's not acceptable. As the owner, I won't stand for that kind of behavior in my restaurants. Lisa opened her mouth again, but Sarah raised a hand to stop her. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. You have a choice to make, Lisa. You can either change your attitude and approach, or you can find another job. Lisa stood there, still in shock, unable to say anything. The truth had set in, and she now realized the gravity of what had just happened. The chain she worked for wasn't just any restaurant, it was her boss's business, and she had just jeopardized her own job with her thoughtless actions. The room was heavy with silence as Sarah's words hung in the air. Lisa stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing as if she wanted to explain herself, but couldn't find the right words. The realization of who Sarah was finally sank in. She had just turned away the owner of the entire restaurant chain, someone with the power to change everything. Sarah watched Lisa carefully, not saying another word. She didn't need to. Lisa's face said it all. Her cheeks flushed bright red with embarrassment, and her eyes darted around the room as if searching for a way out. But there was no escape from this. Sarah had made her point clear. So, Sarah said, breaking the silence. Her tone was calm but stern, the kind of voice you'd use to speak to someone who had just made a grave mistake. What do you have to say for yourself? Lisa took a shaky breath, finally finding her voice. I didn't know who you were. I thought you were just another customer, and I didn't mean to be rude. It's just that we've always prided ourselves on our traditional menu, and I didn't think. Sarah interrupted her, her gaze unwavering. You didn't think what? That people with different dietary needs don't deserve respect? That a vegan customer isn't worth accommodating? That's what you're telling me right now? Lisa lowered her head, unable to meet Sarah's eyes. She could feel the weight of her words pressing down on her, suffocating any excuse she could offer. In that moment, Lisa knew that Sarah wasn't just upset about the rejection. She was angry about the lack of respect. It wasn't just a business mistake, it was a personal one. I didn't mean to disrespect you, Lisa said quietly, her voice barely a whisper now. I've been managing this place for years, and I just didn't think it was a big deal. But now I realize it was. Sarah gave a small nod, though her expression didn't soften. It's a big deal, Lisa. It's a huge deal. The way we treat our customers says everything about the kind of business we run. And right now, the way you treated me shows that you've forgotten that. Lisa looked up at her then, her eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry, she said, the apology genuine, but still too late. Sarah didn't respond right away. She let the apology hang in the air for a moment before speaking again, her voice calm, but with an edge of authority. I'm not here to play the blame game. What's done is done. But I'm not going to let this slide. This restaurant, this entire chain, is built on respect. For the customers, for the food, and for everyone who works here. If that's not something you can get behind, then maybe you're in the wrong line of work." Lisa nodded slowly, her eyes brimming with shame. "I understand," she said quietly. "I messed up. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." Sarah stood up then, signaling that the conversation was coming to an end. "Good, because I'm giving you a second chance. But this is the last one. I don't tolerate this kind of behavior from anyone, and neither should you. If you truly care about this place, you'll make sure this never happens again. Not just for me, but for everyone." Lisa opened her mouth, but no words came out. She simply nodded, her face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and understanding. As Sarah walked toward the door, she paused and turned back to Lisa one last time. "I'll be watching, Lisa, and not just from behind the scenes. Next time, I want you to really think about the kind of restaurant you want to work for. One that's inclusive, respectful, and open to everyone. You don't have to agree with every customer's choice, but you do have to treat them with kindness." With that, Sarah walked out, leaving Lisa standing there in a mix of guilt and reflection. She had thought she was in control, running the restaurant with her own set of rules. But now, Lisa understood that her actions had consequences far beyond her own small world. Outside, Sarah paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. She wasn't angry anymore, not at Lisa anyway, but she knew that things needed to change. She couldn't let this be an isolated incident. If she was going to make a difference, it had to start with this conversation. One restaurant manager, one decision at a time. And as she walked away from the building, she knew she had to take action, not just for herself, but for every customer who would walk through those doors in the future. The next few days passed in a blur for Sarah. While she didn't expect everything to be fixed immediately, she did feel a sense of satisfaction, knowing she had taken the necessary steps to address the situation. But she also knew that this wasn't just a one-off issue. It was a sign that there were deeper problems within the company, especially when it came to customer service and inclusivity. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the rejection wasn't just about her. It was about a bigger attitude problem that needed to be corrected across all the locations. Sarah had expected a response from the corporate office soon, but she didn't expect it to come so quickly. On the third day after her meeting with Lisa, Sarah received a call from the head of customer relations at the company headquarters. The voice on the other end was professional, but clearly eager to address the complaint she had made. "Ms. Williams, I just wanted to personally apologize for the incident that occurred at our 5th Street location. We take customer feedback very seriously, especially when it concerns issues of inclusivity and respect. I understand that the manager involved, Lisa, made a significant mistake, and we are looking into the matter closely." Sarah listened carefully, but she didn't let her guard down. She had heard apologies before, and they didn't always lead to meaningful change. "I appreciate the apology," Sarah said, her voice measured, "but it's not just about Lisa. It's about the culture of the restaurant, the attitudes toward customers who don't fit into the traditional mold." There was a pause on the other end, and Sarah could tell that her words had struck a chord. "You're absolutely right, Ms. Williams. Our brand has prided itself on offering a variety of dishes to our customers, but we've overlooked the importance of truly embracing everyone. We've realized that this goes beyond just vegan options. It's about treating every customer with dignity and respect, regardless of their diet or lifestyle. I want to assure you that this will be addressed immediately." The phone call continued for a while, with Sarah explaining her concerns about how the restaurant's policies, or lack thereof, were affecting customers like her. She also stressed that it wasn't just about offering vegan food. It was about creating an environment where all customers felt welcomed, no matter their dietary preferences. The conversation was constructive, and for the first time in a while, Sarah felt like she wasn't just a customer. She was a part of something bigger. Before hanging up, the corporate representative promised that the company would be implementing new training for all staff across all locations. The goal would be to make sure that incidents like the one with Lisa never happened again, and educate employees on the importance of respecting all customers, regardless of their preferences or beliefs. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention," the representative concluded. "We value your feedback, and I can assure you that this will be addressed promptly. We'll send you an official apology letter and an update on our new policies soon." Sarah hung up the phone, feeling a strange mix of relief and cautious optimism. She had done what she could, but the true test would be whether the company followed through on their promises. She wasn't going to let this be the end of the conversation. She knew that if she wanted things to truly change, she'd need to keep pushing for more than just apologies and promises. Her next step? Ensuring that the company not only talked the talk, but walked the walk. A week had passed since Sarah's call with the corporate office, and she was starting to feel the weight of the situation lift, but she knew the work wasn't done yet. The promises made to her were just words until she saw actual changes. She was used to seeing companies make grand statements only to fall short when it came to following through. But something told her this time might be different. That morning, as Sarah sipped her coffee in the quiet of her home, an email notification popped up on her phone. It was from the corporate office. She opened it immediately, eager to see what progress had been made. The email was straightforward, but the tone was reassuring. It thanked her for her patience and acknowledged the serious nature of her complaint. More importantly, it outlined the steps the company had taken to address the issue. The first step was the implementation of a mandatory staff training program for all employees at every location, focused on inclusivity, respect, and sensitivity to customer needs. The training was set to begin in just a few days, and it would cover not only dietary preferences like veganism, but also other cultural and lifestyle considerations that could affect the customer's experience. Sarah read through the email carefully, her mind racing as she processed the details. She felt a slight sense of relief, but also knew the real challenge lay in whether the staff would take the training seriously. Training programs could be implemented, but it was the attitude of the people involved that mattered most. She knew this would take time. The email also mentioned that the company would be reviewing its menu options across all locations to ensure that more diverse dietary choices were included. The company wanted to create a menu that reflected the growing demand for plant-based and allergen-friendly dishes. Sarah smiled at this. It wasn't just about vegan food. It was about creating a space where everyone could feel welcome, no matter their dietary restrictions. But what really caught Sarah's attention was the closing paragraph of the email. "As part of our commitment to a more inclusive and respectful environment, we would like to extend a formal invitation for you to attend the first training session at our headquarters. Your feedback is invaluable, and we would be honored if you could share your thoughts and experiences with our team. Your voice is critical to ensuring we make lasting, meaningful changes." The invitation made Sarah pause. She had expected some follow-up, but she hadn't expected an invitation to be directly involved in the training process. This was a chance for her to ensure that the company followed through, to be present during the training and directly contribute to the conversation. It felt like the right move. a way for her to make sure that the lessons learned weren't just theoretical, but something the employees could actually put into practice. Sarah took a moment to think. She knew this was a pivotal moment, not just for her, but for the future of the restaurant chain. If the company truly wanted to change, it needed more than just policies and training. It needed real commitment from everyone involved. Sarah could be the catalyst for that change, the voice of accountability, and the reminder that actions spoke louder than words. She quickly typed a response, agreeing to attend the session and offering her willingness to help shape the future of the company. Within moments, she hit send. The email was simple, but it felt like a turning point. Sarah wasn't just a customer anymore. She'd become part of something bigger, a movement toward change that would start with one restaurant and spread to the entire chain. The work she had started wasn't finished. It was just beginning. As Sarah leaned back in her chair, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had stood up for herself and for others who had been ignored or dismissed. And now, she was about to play a direct role in making sure that no one else would have to experience the same kind of treatment she had. The days leading up to the training session were filled with anticipation. Sarah knew she had a unique opportunity ahead of her, one that many people never got. She was about to sit at the table with the corporate leadership and the restaurant staff to help guide the changes she had fought for. There was a sense of responsibility weighing on her, but also a growing sense of excitement. On the morning of the session, Sarah arrived at the company's headquarters, a sleek office building located in the heart of the city. It was a far cry from the cozy, down-to-earth vibe of the restaurant. But Sarah had always known that the heart of the business was more than just the bricks and mortar. It was in the people who worked there. When she walked into the conference room, she was met with a mix of curious and nervous faces. The corporate team, including the CEO and several department heads, were seated around a large table. At the far end of the room stood a projector screen, and a stack of materials was neatly arranged in front of each seat. There was an air of formality, but also a sense that everyone was aware of the importance of this moment. Ms. Williams, thank you for joining us today. The CEO, a middle-aged man named Mark, greeted her warmly as she took a seat. We appreciate you being here to help us understand how we can better serve our customers and make our restaurants more inclusive. Your perspective means a lot to us. Sarah smiled politely, but her mind was already focused on the task ahead. She knew that today wasn't just about talking. It was about making sure that everyone in this room understood the importance of what was at stake. The training session began with a brief introduction from Mark, who emphasized the company's commitment to creating a more welcoming environment for all customers, especially those with dietary restrictions. He mentioned that this session was only the first step, and that it would be followed by further discussions and workshops in the coming weeks. As you all know, customer satisfaction is at the heart of what we do, Mark said, addressing the group. But it's not just about serving good food. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels welcome. And that means we have to start by listening, to understand what our customers truly need. Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach. The words sounded good, but she had heard them before. She knew that talk was easy. Action was what mattered. She was here to ensure that the next steps were the right ones. The first part of the session focused on understanding the different dietary needs of customers: veganism, gluten intolerance, allergies, and other dietary preferences. The staff were introduced to some basic principles of inclusivity: how to address customers respectfully, how to ask about dietary restrictions without making anyone feel uncomfortable, and how to suggest alternatives without sounding dismissive. Sarah listened closely, but her mind kept going back to Lisa. She couldn't help but think about how different things could have been if Lisa had been trained on these very principles. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that it wasn't just a matter of changing the menu. It was about changing the mindset of the entire staff. As the session continued, Sarah was invited to share her own experiences. She had been asked to speak about her visit to the Fifth Street location and how the treatment she received had made her feel. She took a deep breath and stood up, her eyes scanning the room full of attentive faces. She could tell that some of the staff were nervous. They weren't used to hearing direct feedback from someone who was both a customer and an owner. "I'm here today not just because I had a bad experience," Sarah began, her voice steady but firm. "I'm here because I want to make sure that no one else goes through what I did. I wasn't just rejected because of my diet. I was dismissed, treated like I wasn't worth the time or respect." There was a quiet murmur in the room, and Sarah could feel the weight of her words settling over the group. "I know that not everyone here may agree with every dietary choice customers make," she continued. "But what's important is that you treat every customer with respect, no matter what their preferences are. It's about listening, understanding, and finding a way to make them feel welcome. If we can't do that, then we're not really serving our customers. We're serving our own biases." Sarah paused, letting the silence hang for a moment. She could see some of the staff members nodding, processing what she had said. It wasn't about veganism, gluten-free diets, or any other trend. It was about making people feel valued. "That's why I'm here today," Sarah finished, sitting back down. "I'm not just asking you to change the menu or the way you talk about food. I'm asking you to change the way you think about your customers. And that starts with respect." The room was quiet for a long moment. Sarah's words had clearly resonated with the group, and she could see the shift in their faces. It wasn't a quick fix, and she knew it would take time for the lessons to truly sink in. But she also knew that this was the beginning of something important. As the session came to an end, Mark thanked Sarah again for her participation. "We're grateful for your honesty and your perspective," he said. "We've got a long road ahead of us, but with your help, we'll get there." Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of satisfaction and determination. This wasn't over yet, but she knew that the work she was doing was making a difference, and this, she realized, was just the start. As the weeks passed, Sarah continued to stay in touch with the corporate office. She received updates on the progress of the new training sessions and the changes being made at the restaurant locations. Every update made her feel more confident that the company was genuinely committed to the transformation. But Sarah knew that real change wasn't going to happen overnight. She understood that it would take time for the employees to fully embrace the new mindset and for the customers to feel the difference. Still, she remained hopeful. One afternoon, Sarah decided to visit the Fifth Street location once again, the very same restaurant where her ordeal had started. She hadn't been back since the incident with Lisa. She wasn't sure how things would feel or how she would be received, but she knew it was time to see if the changes had truly taken root. When Sarah walked in, the first thing she noticed was the atmosphere. The usual hum of conversation and the clinking of plates was still there, but there was something different. The energy felt more welcoming. There was a sense of ease in the air that hadn't been there before. As she stood by the entrance, she was greeted almost immediately by a young server who flashed her a friendly smile. "Welcome. How many are in your party today?" the server asked, clearly attentive and eager to help. It was a small change, but Sarah could feel it. The warmth in the server's voice was genuine, something that had been missing during her last visit. She told the server she was alone and requested a table by the window. As she was led to her seat, she noticed the menu had changed slightly. There were now several new plant-based options, clearly marked for easy identification. It wasn't a massive overhaul, but the additions were thoughtful, and they showed that the restaurant was trying to meet the needs of all its customers, not just those who fit into the traditional mold. Sarah sat down and took a moment to look around. It wasn't just the menu or the food that had changed, it was the attitude. The staff seemed more engaged with the customers, more attentive to their needs, and there was a visible effort to make everyone feel welcome. A couple at a nearby table asked the server about a vegan option, and instead of dismissing them or showing impatience, the server immediately recommended a few dishes and explained how the kitchen could accommodate any dietary needs. It was a small moment, but for Sarah, it was a sign that things were moving in the right direction. As she waited for her meal, Sarah thought about how far things had come. The last time she had been here, she had been rejected by Lisa with little regard for her needs. Now, things felt different. It wasn't just about the vegan options on the menu or the staff's willingness to be helpful, it was about a shift in culture. The company had made a genuine effort to change, and that effort was reflected in the way the restaurant operated now. When her food arrived, Sarah took a bite and smiled. The dish was delicious, simple, fresh, and clearly made with care. As she finished her meal, she reflected on the journey she had been on. It hadn't been easy, and there had been moments of doubt, but she could now see the impact of her actions. By speaking up, she had sparked something much bigger than just one bad experience. She had been part of a movement toward inclusivity, respect, and empathy. When she finished her meal, Sarah asked to speak with the manager. It wasn't Lisa. Sarah had heard that Lisa had been reassigned to another location following the incident. Instead, a young woman named Jenna came over to her table, a friendly smile on her face. "Hi, how was everything today?" Jenna asked. "It was great," Sarah replied, returning the smile. "I just wanted to thank you and the team. I can really feel the difference here now. You've all made a big change, and it's noticeable." Jenna looked a little surprised but pleased. "Thank you for saying that. We've been working really hard to make sure every customer feels welcome. It's definitely been a team effort, but it's been worth it." Sarah nodded. "It shows. And I just wanted to say, I appreciate the attention to detail with the menu and the staff's attitude. You're all doing a great job." Jenna's smile widened. "That means a lot. We really want to make sure everyone has a great experience here." As Sarah finished paying her bill and stood to leave, she felt a sense of fulfillment. She had walked into that restaurant weeks ago, disheartened and frustrated, but now she was leaving with a renewed sense of hope. The company had listened, and things were changing, slowly but surely. As Sarah stepped out onto the sidewalk, she glanced back at the restaurant. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. She knew that this was only the beginning, but she felt proud of the part she had played in shaping its future. She wasn't just a customer anymore. She'd become a catalyst for change. A few days after Sarah's visit to the 5th Street location, she received an unexpected call. The number on her phone was unfamiliar, but something about it made her pick up. When she answered, she was greeted by a familiar voice, the same voice she had heard during her heated exchange with the manager weeks ago. "Hello, is this Sarah Williams?" Lisa's voice sounded different this time, softer, more tentative. Yes, it is. Who's this? Sarah asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. It's Lisa, the voice on the other end said. I don't know if you remember me, but I was the manager at the Fifth Street location. We had, well, we had a bit of an incident a while ago. Sarah felt a mix of surprise and confusion. She hadn't expected to hear from Lisa, especially not after everything that had happened. But there was something in her tone that made Sarah pause. There was no defensiveness, no rush to explain herself, just a quiet, almost reluctant honesty. Of course, I remember, Sarah said, her voice calm. What's going on? I've been thinking a lot about what happened, Lisa continued, her words coming out slowly, almost as if she were carefully choosing them. And I wanted to call and apologize to you, really apologize. I was rude and I dismissed you without thinking. I made assumptions, and I know that was wrong. I've been going through the new training, and it's been an eye-opener for me. I realize now how much I missed when it comes to treating customers with respect. Not just you, but everyone. Sarah was quiet for a moment, absorbing what Lisa had said. She hadn't expected this. After the way Lisa had acted before, she had thought the manager would simply try to sweep things under the rug or avoid confronting her actions. But here was Lisa, offering a genuine apology, a step Sarah hadn't expected. I appreciate your apology, Lisa, Sarah said finally, her voice softer than before. It means a lot to hear you say that. I know I can't take back what I did, Lisa replied, her voice steady but filled with remorse. But I've learned so much through the training. It's not just about offering vegan food or accommodating dietary needs. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued, no matter who they are or what they believe. I'm working on myself, and I just want to make sure something like that never happens again. Sarah could hear the sincerity in Lisa's voice. She knew that apologizing wasn't easy, especially for someone who had been so defensive in the past. But she also knew that change didn't happen overnight. People made mistakes, but it was the effort to correct those mistakes that mattered most. I'm glad to hear that, Sarah said, and I hope the training really sticks. It's not just about learning the right words to say, it's about changing how we think and act every day. There was a pause on the other end, and Sarah could sense Lisa reflecting on her words. I know, Lisa said after a beat, and that's what I'm trying to do. It's hard, but I want to be better. I want to make sure no customer ever feels the way you did when you walked out that day. Sarah smiled faintly, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. She wasn't expecting Lisa to be perfect, but she could hear the effort in her voice, the genuine desire to grow and do better. It wasn't just an apology, it was a commitment to change. You've got this, Lisa, Sarah said, her tone warm but firm. Just keep doing the work. It's going to take time, but I can already tell you're on the right path. Thank you, Lisa said, her voice filled with gratitude. Thank you for giving me the chance to make things right. As Sarah hung up the phone, she sat back in her chair, reflecting on the conversation. It wasn't just an apology. It was a sign that Lisa had learned something from the experience, and that gave Sarah hope. Hope that this wasn't just about one restaurant or one manager, but about changing the way people thought and acted, one step at a time. Sarah knew that Lisa wasn't the only one who had learned something from this. She, too, had gained a deeper understanding of the power of standing up for what's right and the impact of speaking out. She hadn't just changed one manager's mind, she had helped shift the entire culture of a company. And in the end, that was what mattered. A few days after Lisa's heartfelt apology, Sarah received another email from the corporate office. This time, It wasn't just an update about the ongoing training or menu changes. It was something much bigger, an official public statement. The email opened with a formal apology from the company, acknowledging the incident that had sparked the entire wave of change. The letter addressed the rejection of a customer at the Fifth Street location and how it had led to an important internal reflection. It was clear from the tone of the email that the company was taking full responsibility for the situation, without trying to deflect blame or minimize the issue. They recognized that the failure to accommodate a customer's needs went beyond a single mistake. It reflected a deeper cultural issue that needed to be addressed. The statement also included a commitment to the ongoing training initiatives, stating that all employees, from top management to the newest staff member, would participate in programs designed to foster inclusivity and respect for diverse dietary needs. They acknowledged that while changes had already been made, there was still much more to do to ensure that these values were embedded in the company's culture. "We deeply regret the incident that occurred," the statement read, "and we want to assure our customers and employees that this was an isolated failure of individual actions, not a reflection of our core values. Our team is committed to making sure every customer who walks through our doors feels valued and respected, regardless of their dietary choices or lifestyle." Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as she read through the email. The company had taken the initiative to publicly acknowledge its mistakes and had committed to making real, lasting changes. It wasn't just about what had happened at the Fifth Street location anymore. It was about a nationwide shift that would affect every restaurant in the chain. For Sarah, this was proof that her efforts had made an impact. The conversation she had started was no longer just a personal one. It had turned into a movement that was being seen by thousands of customers and employees. But what really caught her attention was the final paragraph of the statement. "As part of our commitment to growth and change, we are launching an initiative to actively listen to our customers. We want to hear your stories, your feedback, and your suggestions. We believe that only by understanding our customers' diverse needs can we truly make our restaurant a place for everyone." This was the moment Sarah had been waiting for. The company wasn't just acknowledging the problem. It was actively seeking input from customers like her, people who had felt overlooked or dismissed. The commitment to listening to customers in a genuine way was the true mark of transformation. Sarah quickly forwarded the email to her friends and family, excited to share the news. It was clear that the company was serious about making things right. She knew that this wasn't the end of the journey, but it was a significant milestone. That afternoon, as Sarah reflected on the changes that had already occurred, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had helped the company recognize its flaws, and in doing so, she had made an entire industry take notice. It wasn't about being a hero. It was about doing the right thing and standing up for what she believed in. But it was the ripple effect, the lasting impact of this change that truly made her proud. As she read through the public statement again, Sarah realized that the real work had only just begun. The company was taking the first steps, but the true test would be how they followed through in the months and years to come. She couldn't rest on her laurels just yet. She knew that, as a customer and as a member of the community, her role was far from over. Still, there was a sense of quiet satisfaction in her heart. She had started a conversation that was bigger than herself. And in that moment, she felt like she had done something meaningful, not just for herself, but for everyone who would walk into a restaurant and expect to be treated with dignity and respect. It wasn't long before Sarah began to notice the first signs that the changes were taking root at the restaurants. A few weeks after the public statement, she visited another location, this time a much busier one in a different part of town. The restaurant was bustling with activity, as it always was during lunchtime, but there was a distinct difference in the way the staff was interacting with customers. The energy in the air felt different. It felt more welcoming. As Sarah entered, she was greeted immediately by the host, who asked, "How are you today? Just one?" The host's tone was friendly and upbeat, and there was a level of attentiveness that Sarah hadn't noticed before. She smiled and nodded, saying, yes, she was dining alone today. While waiting for her table, she noticed a large sign near the entrance that read, "We welcome all dietary preferences. Let us know how we can accommodate you." It was a simple message, but one that made a big impact. It was a clear, visible sign that the restaurant was making a conscious effort to be inclusive. Sarah was seated quickly and handed a menu by her server, who also greeted her warmly. "Good afternoon. If you have any questions about our menu or need any recommendations, feel free to ask. We've recently added a few plant-based options to make sure there's something for everyone." The server's tone was natural, and Sarah could tell that the change wasn't just about the food, it was about the attitude. The staff wasn't just trying to make a sale, they were genuinely interested in making the dining experience enjoyable for everyone. When Sarah asked about vegan options, the server didn't hesitate. "We've got a fantastic new vegan burger on the menu, and we can make most of our salads vegan as well. If you want to know more about how we prepare things, or if you have any concerns, I'm happy to answer them." This small, simple exchange made Sarah feel at ease. The server was knowledgeable, respectful, and genuinely helpful. It was the kind of customer service she had hoped for when she first raised her concerns. It wasn't about being overly accommodating. It was about being aware of the different needs of customers and responding in a way that made them feel seen and respected. As Sarah enjoyed her meal, she looked around the restaurant. More customers were asking about dietary options, and the staff responded in a way that showed real understanding. One family at a nearby table asked about gluten-free options, and the server confidently explained the gluten-free dishes available and assured them that the kitchen was able to adjust certain items to meet their needs. There was no hint of impatience, no eye rolls or dismissive attitudes, just a genuine desire to help. Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as she observed the positive changes. This was what she had hoped for, a culture where every customer, no matter their dietary preferences, felt welcome and valued. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was clear that the company was moving in the right direction. The public statement and training programs weren't just words, they were becoming actions. And for Sarah, seeing these changes unfold firsthand was the reward for all the work she had put in. When Sarah finished her meal, she asked to speak with the manager. This time, the manager was a young woman named Emma, who had a warm and approachable demeanor. When she came over, Sarah smiled and introduced herself. "I just wanted to thank you and your team for the amazing service today. It's clear that there's been a real shift in how things are being done here, and I can't tell you how much it means to me as a customer." Emma looked surprised but pleased. "Thank you so much for saying that. We've all been working hard to make sure that every customer has a great experience, no matter what their dietary needs are." "I can really see that," Sarah said. "It's been a long journey, but I can tell that this place is on the right track. Keep up the great work." As Sarah left the restaurant, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She knew that there was still more work to be done. Change was a gradual process, but this felt like a true turning point. She had seen the results of her efforts, and it was clear that her actions had sparked a transformation that was making a real difference. The next steps would require continued vigilance and commitment, but Sarah knew she had already made an impact. She had stood up for what was right, and in doing so, she had helped create a more inclusive, respectful environment for everyone who walked through those doors. As Sarah continued to visit various locations of the restaurant chain, the changes she had fought for became more and more evident. Every time she walked into a restaurant, she was greeted with a warmer, more inclusive atmosphere. The staff were more engaged, more knowledgeable about dietary restrictions, and they were genuinely making an effort to accommodate every customer. It wasn't just a surface-level shift. It felt like a cultural change that was permeating throughout the entire company. One day, Sarah visited a location that was newer, in a neighborhood she didn't usually frequent. When she walked in, she immediately noticed the difference. The restaurant was busy, but there was something different about the energy. The host greeted her with a smile, asked if she had any dietary preferences, and immediately offered to make sure she was seated at a table where she could easily view the menu options. There was a new sign by the entrance, just like the one at the 5th Street location, proudly announcing that they welcomed all dietary needs and that no one should ever feel like an outsider. Sarah took a seat and observed the environment. The menu was more diverse than it had been before, with several plant-based options clearly marked. The staff seemed more at ease when talking about vegan, gluten-free, or allergy-friendly choices. It wasn't just a list of items on the menu. It was a shift in how they viewed their customers. They were no longer simply serving food. They were providing an experience that was tailored to the needs of each person who walked through the door. As Sarah enjoyed her meal, she overheard a conversation at a nearby table. A couple with young children was asking the server about gluten-free options, and the server responded with enthusiasm. She explained which dishes could be made gluten-free and assured them that the kitchen would take extra care in preparing the meal to avoid cross-contamination. It wasn't just a box to tick off. It was a genuine effort to make the experience comfortable for the family. Sarah could tell that the staff was making it a priority to understand the importance of catering to different dietary needs. What struck Sarah the most was the fact that these changes weren't isolated incidents. They were becoming standard practice. No longer was it a special request for a vegan dish or a gluten-free modification. It was simply part of the dining experience. The restaurant had fully embraced the idea that inclusivity wasn't an add-on. It was a core value that shaped everything from how they treated their customers to how they created their menu. The ripple effect of her efforts was clear. This was what Sarah had hoped for when she started this journey. It wasn't just about changing one manager's behavior. It was about sparking a larger transformation that reached every corner of the company. The impact was growing, and it was becoming a force for positive change, not just for the restaurant chain, but for the entire community of customers it served. As the months passed, Sarah continued to monitor the progress of the restaurant chain, not just as a customer, but as someone who had become a part of its journey. She had played a pivotal role in helping the company realize its shortcomings and set in motion a transformation that had already begun to affect thousands of customers and employees. Sarah began to get more involved in the company's efforts to keep improving. She had been invited to participate in feedback sessions where customers could voice their opinions on how the restaurants were evolving. Sarah's experience gave her a unique perspective. She wasn't just a passive customer. She had seen the inner workings of the company, and she understood the challenges that came with making lasting change. Her role wasn't over. It was just evolving into something more meaningful. In one of the feedback sessions, Sarah was asked to speak about how the company could continue to push the boundaries of inclusivity and respect. She shared her thoughts on how the restaurant could expand its menu to include more diverse options for people with specific dietary needs, as well as how they could make the dining experience even more comfortable for those with allergies or other medical conditions. She encouraged the company to not just stop at vegan and gluten-free options, but to think about the growing demand for plant-based alternatives that supported different environmental and ethical values. The company listened. They took notes and assured Sarah that they would be incorporating her feedback into their long-term strategy. But it wasn't just about food. Sarah also suggested that the company could do more to make the dining experience accessible for people with physical disabilities, especially in larger cities where foot traffic could be challenging for some. She spoke about creating an atmosphere where all customers felt not only accepted, but celebrated for their differences. Sarah was beginning to see that her role wasn't just about addressing a single issue. It was about helping the restaurant evolve into a leader in the hospitality industry. Her influence was creating lasting change, not just at one restaurant or one location, but across the entire company. One afternoon, while reflecting on how far things had come, Sarah received another invitation from the corporate office. This time, it was an invitation to speak at an industry-wide conference about her experience and the changes she had helped spark. The company wanted Sarah to share her story as a case study and how customer feedback could lead to real, meaningful transformation. The thought of speaking in front of a large audience was intimidating, but Sarah knew that her story was one worth telling. She wasn't just a customer with a complaint. She was a catalyst for change. As she prepared for the conference, Sarah realized that she had become more than just an advocate for inclusivity. She had become a voice for those who often went unheard, the customers who needed more, who were often overlooked or dismissed. And in the process, she had found her own voice. It was a reminder that even the smallest actions could spark a ripple of change that reached far beyond what anyone could imagine. The day of the conference arrived, and Sarah couldn't help but feel a rush of nerves as she stood backstage, preparing to speak in front of an audience of hundreds. This wasn't just any audience. It was made up of industry leaders, restaurant owners, chefs, and hospitality professionals from across the country. They were all gathered to learn, to share best practices, and, in Sarah's case, to hear how one woman's determination had led to real change within a major restaurant chain. As she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight briefly blinded her, but she quickly adjusted. She smiled as she saw the audience, diverse, eager, and curious. She had been invited to speak as a case study of how customer feedback could lead to transformational change in a company. But for Sarah, this moment wasn't about being recognized for her efforts. It was about sharing the story of how something as simple as speaking up could start a ripple effect that changed an entire company and potentially an entire industry. "Good afternoon, everyone," Sarah began, her voice steady but with a hint of excitement. "I'm here to share a story, not just about a restaurant chain, but about the power of speaking up and making your voice heard. I'm not an expert in restaurant management or hospitality. I'm just a customer who wanted to be treated with respect. And because of that simple desire, I've had the opportunity to help create a shift in an entire company." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Sarah could see that she had the audience's attention, and that gave her the confidence to continue. It started with one moment of frustration, being rejected at a restaurant because I asked for a vegan option. But what followed that moment was a journey that led to conversations with the corporate team, changes in how staff were trained, a shift in the company's values, and, most importantly, an understanding that customer satisfaction goes beyond just offering a product. It's about respecting the diverse needs of every customer who walks through your door. Sarah spoke about how the company had gone through a series of internal changes, from revising the menu to providing better training for their employees. But she didn't just focus on the success. She also talked about the challenges, the doubts, and the pushback she had faced along the way. Change is never easy, she said. There were moments when I felt like I was fighting an uphill battle, but the key was persistence, knowing that what I was asking for wasn't just a personal request, it was something that could make a difference for everyone. As Sarah continued, she could feel the room shifting. The audience wasn't just listening, they were connecting with her story. She spoke about the ripple effect that had occurred since her first complaint, and how the company's commitment to inclusivity had started to inspire change in other areas of the restaurant industry. She shared how the initiative to embrace diverse dietary needs was spreading to other restaurants and chains, and how more and more companies were recognizing the importance of treating every customer with respect, no matter their background or dietary choice. "We're seeing a shift in the industry," Sarah said, her voice gaining momentum. "Customers are no longer willing to accept being overlooked or dismissed. They want to feel seen, heard, and respected. And as an industry, we need to meet those expectations. It's not just about the food. It's about creating an experience that is inclusive and welcoming for all." By the end of her presentation, Sarah felt a sense of pride wash over her. She had shared her story in a way that wasn't about the drama of the past. It was about the progress, the lessons learned, and the impact that change could have on an entire industry. When she finished speaking, the audience applauded, and for a moment, Sarah stood in the spotlight, knowing that her journey had led to something much bigger than herself. As the conference came to a close, Sarah took a moment to reflect on the path she had traveled. She had gone from being a frustrated customer, dismissed by a restaurant manager, to a speaker at a national industry conference, sharing her story with hundreds of hospitality professionals. But the journey was far from over. While the company she had helped change had made significant strides, Sarah knew that the work wasn't complete. Change was a process, and she had only scratched the surface. There was still much to be done, not just within the restaurant chain, but across the entire industry. The conversation about inclusivity, respect, and diverse dietary needs had to continue, and Sarah was determined to be a part of that conversation for as long as she could. After the conference, Sarah received numerous messages from people in the hospitality industry, restaurant owners, managers, and chefs, thanking her for sharing her story. Many of them expressed that they had been inspired by what she had accomplished and wanted to know how they could do the same in their own businesses. Some even asked for her advice on how to create more inclusive menus or train their staff to be more aware of different dietary needs. Sarah felt both humbled and empowered by the response. She had never set out to become an advocate or a public speaker, but the experience had shown her that her voice had power. She could make a difference, not just for herself, but for countless others who had felt ignored or marginalized by the food industry. As she sat down to respond to a few of the messages, Sarah realized something. This wasn't just about veganism or gluten-free diets anymore. It was about creating an environment where all customers felt welcome, where their needs were met, and where respect was the foundation of every interaction. It was about making sure that no one ever felt the way she had felt that day when she was rejected by Lisa, the way she had felt invisible, unimportant. Sarah had started with one small, seemingly insignificant moment of frustration. But that moment had sparked a movement, one that was already beginning to spread. And while she knew that change would take time, she felt confident that the ripple effect would continue to grow, reaching more and more people, and creating a world where respect, inclusivity, and kindness were the standards, not the exceptions. As Sarah closed her laptop and looked out the window, she thought about the future. She wasn't done yet. There was still so much more to be done, so many more voices to be heard. But she knew one thing for certain. She was ready for whatever came next.